You are listening to the e-flux podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the e-flux screening room. My name is Lauren Lee, and I'm Programs Administrator here at e-flux. It's my honor to welcome you tonight for a screening and conversation presented by the African Film Institute. With us here tonight are Natacha Nsabimana, the curator for this film series, Feza Kayungu Ramazani, artist and researcher, as well as Christian Nyampeta, the convener of the African Film Institute. Natacha Nsabimana teaches in the anthropology department at the University of Chicago. Her research and teaching interests include post-colonial critique, music movements, and the cultural and political worlds of African peoples on the continent and in the diaspora. After the screening, Natacha will be joined in conversation by Feza Kayungu Ramazani. Feza is an artist and researcher based in Lubumbashi. She's a member of the Power to the Commons project and another roadmap of Arts Education Africa Cluster, which is a network of researchers and practitioners engaged in collaborative research revisiting the history, politics, and alternative practices in arts education through literature. Feza is also curatorial assistant at École soir, administrator of Centre d'Art Waza, and a critical writer questioning images of African beauty and exoticism. Her research on African values, creativity, ancestral practices, and technology aligns with a desire to reinvent the conception and conservative function of museums in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Finally, Christian Nyampeta is an artist, filmmaker, and researcher living in New York and working in London, the Netherlands, and Rwanda, where he convenes the Nyanza working group of the Another Roadmap African Cluster. In New York, Nyampeta sits on the board of directors at Storefront for Art and Architecture, and he is also on the board of November magazine. Nyampeta holds a PhD in visual cultures at Goldsmiths, completed under the supervision of Kodwo Eshun, and following the examination of Leela Gandhi and Denise Ferreira da Silva. Please give it up for Christian.
Hi, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be here. And thank you to Lauren for the introductions and to the e-flux team for hosting us. And I would also like to thank Amal Issa, who has preceded Lauren in the organizing of this series, of this program. So I was just reflecting that today marks about a year since the prelude of the program of the African Film Institute here, which is quite remarkable because, of course, a lot has changed since this short period of time. And the actual program started in January with Natacha Nsabimana here, programs that included a film by Amelia Omukire, followed by Susana Solomon, and joined by Fo Matsipa. And then a guest program by Omar Berada with Ahmed El Manouni Al Halal, meaning trances. And then Haile Gerima's Sankofa with Honey Crawford and Merawi Gerima, which was a beautiful program. And then today. So it feels like then I've had a chance to stand here many times, such a way that I could almost speak freely about what this program is, but I shouldn't. So I would like to read a little bit on what is imagined with the African Film Institute, which is a home and a place for African cinema that we hope to create intimacy with African cinema here in New York through developing gradually and organically a viewing program animated by fellowships, a growing library, an active writer's room, and an expanding catalogue of recorded dialogues. So this presence of African cinema is maintained through a cultural critique, social analysis, and a convivial scholarship grounded in fellowship and anchored in mutuality and affiliation with near and distant places and times, rendered through the medium of the moving image in the plural idiom of African expressions. So the wish here is to supplement existing public encounters with African cinema in New York most of which take place at screenings presented as either part of occasional and temporary exhibitions or at dedicated film festivals that are limited to a number of days each year, leaving public and students of African cinema underserved or unserved for the remainder of the year. I should, of course, also add that we stand, therefore, on the shoulders of the likes of the African film festivals, without which it's almost inconceivable to think of African cinema in New York. Yeah, so I would like to continue more, but what is important to say is that the idea of African cinema understood only in Brooklyn, it will be incomplete. So the African Film Institute is affiliated with a number of other institutions working on the African continent. And this is done through gatherings, but also an ongoing program with institutions that the aim is to host parallel programs that take place here, but also other ones that are all invited all together to present here. And this include Wakaliwood in Kampala, a program in Lagos organized by Dika Ofama, but also ongoing new programs that may emerge as we go, and programs in Kinshasa and Lubumbashi, and a program in Kigali, some of which include new productions. So I look forward to today, and I would like to hand over and to your questions afterwards. And I look forward to hand over the microphone to Natacha Nsabimana. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'll say a few words about my role here in the curation, and then a couple of sentences about the format, and maybe one or two sentences about the film. The film speaks for itself, so I won't be long. So Christian approached me about a year ago, I guess, a little more than a year ago, to be a fellow for this institute that he was starting and to curate a film series on a thematic of my choice. And I thought, given the Institute's goal and mission and the Institute's name, period, African Film Institute, I thought it would be interesting to start with asking ourselves, and by ourselves, I mean you in the audience, but image makers, visual storytellers, what African cinema is, whether it's a thing that exists, if it's a thing that is worth thinking about, if the formulation in the singular makes sense, and to whom. So those are sort of those are the questions behind each film and each guest. The second thing I thought that might be interesting would be to have people from different training and different angles thinking about these questions, because I think that yields more interesting answers. So what does it mean to have an architect, Paul Matsipa, discuss a documentary about a market in Addis, which was Mercato, done by Sosena Solomon, who's a filmmaker herself? Or what does it mean to have Amelia Omohire's film, that a 7-minute short experimental about what it means to return to a place that everyone calls home, but that you don't really remember because you left under tragic circumstances when you were 4, etc. So tonight's film is by Raoul Peck. I think that everyone, I'm sure in New York knows who he is, since I Am Not Your Negro and Exterminate All the Brutes. But I thought it would be really, really interesting to go back to his Lumumba film, which came out 20 years ago, I think. I saw it a long time ago, because Patrice Lumumba is an iconic figure in, African politics, African literature, all kinds of different circles, activist circles, the Black Panthers, so many people. To see what it means to think about this question of freedom and self-determination. At that moment in the 60s in Africa, where decolonization was the main sort of thematic, but also what it means for us to go back to this question today. On Instagram and social media, especially I think since October 7th, I see a lot of hashtag Free Congo, Free Palestine, Free Sudan. And I always, I'm always a bit taken aback by how those three things sit together. So I thought it would be and also a good way to think about what does it mean to evoke Free Congo today? What's the relationship of that hashtag to this moment when Lumumba was fighting for a free Congo? All right, so after the film, Feza and I will be in conversation, but really the format, the third thing that is really important for us is to also be in conversation with you in the audience. So I'll ask one or two questions, but really we want to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions about the film, about Centre d'Art Waza, where Feza works and is part of the collective there. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation. Thank you. Okay, so before we go to Lumumba, Feza, thank you for coming, for agreeing to have this conversation with us. I want to begin by situating a little bit your work. So can you talk to us about Centre d'Art Waza and the kind of artistic production that happens there? And I think before you respond, because it will lead us into... This question will get us back to Lumumba. Can we show some of the art from the place so you get a sense of what I'm talking about? There are, lots of images, but we chose a few that were connected to the theme of the film. Yes, I think that's it. There are many more, of course. So yeah, Feza, if you could tell us a little bit about Centre d'Art Waza and contextualize some of these images for us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Feza. I come from Congo, Waza. So we are an artistic center, and it has been now more than 12 years since Waza has been created by some practitioners and curators from Lubumbashi, and whose, I would say, the major figure is Patrick Mudekereza, is Grace Curator and the initiator of the center. So we work on art education, economy of education, and non-extractivist museums practices. And that's where we find this collection, which is a collection of about 9,000 of popular paintings and artistic works from the period just after the independence. So there was a secession, just like in the movie, and people were displaced from the Katanga province, and some of the people left their paintings in the house, and the people who started living there started selling them. So the idea came from a Belgian priest who started collecting them, and they stocked them in one of the convents. So Waza is working on this collection just so that they can put it and exhibit in a museum so that everybody can have an idea and also access the collection. So on art education, Waza works on experiences. We have a library, we have a radio, we have also a studio of music production and a space which is open to all artists. So like I said, it's open and it's free. Artists come, we work with them. There is no restrictions to creation. So we accept people to try to experiment new practices. This is our currency. So we have a large ecosystem in Lubumbashi, and we work on different projects. And also one of the projects is on land and resistance. So we are into the green imperialism. Yeah, so shortly, this is Waza, and we work together with Christian Yampeta and also with a lot of other collaborators all across Congo, Africa, and Europe, and the US, of course.
Yeah, thank you. And so now to sort of take us back to the film, all of this happens in the period leading to independence, the fight for independence, June 30th, 1960, official independence as chronicled in the film. And so the other question I wanted to ask you is, does Patrice Lumumba come up in conversation or in some of the artistic production or some of the expressions of the artists that you work with in Lubumbashi or elsewhere, and how? So what does he evoke today for the young generation of Congolese artists that you encounter?
Yeah, myself, I am a testimony. I also worked on Lumumba, by the way. So a lot of artists are working, and it has become like, I would say, culture, most especially on the day of the independence. One of the recent work was Moto ya Kimpwanza. I also collaborated with leaders. So mainly it's questions, like artist questions, if Lumumba is satisfied by the fact that we have decided to continue his case to freedom. So it is like a dialogue. Are we doing the better way? Are we continuing your case? Are we still carrying that struggle to freedom with us? And another question is about the fire. Like, we still long for that freedom. Like, we're still fighting, but have we reached that place that Lumumba wanted us to take it, and to take it to a place where he wanted us to reach, and also a level of freedom which is undeniable, unquestionable. So all those questions, these are the features which always come up when artists are questioning Lumumba's struggle, and also, always come back.
Wow. Okay. So if I understand what you're saying, the idea is that the project of liberation is not finished. That, at least that is some of the questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I would say, for example, the non-extractivist museum practices is one of the example where the idea of museum should be decolonized. So now we're not talking about colonization, but we're talking about decolonization, which is one of the process to freedom. That's why artists continue to question. That's why I mentioned earlier green imperialism or green colonialism. Like, people are living on their lands, and there are those questions of who fixed the rules to prevent people from getting from one place to another, where they've been living there for years and decades, just for the simple reason, which is, you should not go to this place because we are trying to preserve nature. But what about those people who have been living there for years, preserving that nature, preserving those trees? But you're coming with machines, you're coming with mining exploitations and all those engines, but you're telling them not to go to those places. So these are the questions which come up every time: resistance, lands, ecology, and colonization. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think you started to answer one of the following question I want to ask, which is, at the time for Lumumba and for 1960s decolonization in Africa, I think a key question was, freedom from colonization, self-determination. So you're saying that part of my question was going to be, what does that question look like today? Because independence happened, at least officially. The whole continent is free. So I was going to ask, what does freedom look like today, sound like today? What does it mean? What are the preoccupations that we have today, given that supposedly there's no colonizing, foreign colonizing force? So you're saying that part of the answer is this focus on green colonialism and this focus on land and resistance. So, number one, I want to hear about that. And then the other thing I want to hear about is, what do you mean when you say non-extractive museum practices? I think it's an important clarification.
Yeah, thank you. I'll go with the project that Waza carried in 2020, from 2021 to 2023, which is Kirata, which is a deformation of the word curator from the English. And the project itself was to put together artists and artistic practitioners in order to appropriate the curatorship concept. So, like the word itself has been deformed, like from English to Lingala, to a more understandable term, which could also mean something from the Congolese perspective. So it started with questioning for who do we produce art, and who is the one who should judge art. So sometimes artists tended to create art to respond to certain norms, but which are from foreign perspectives. That was one of the questions, like who judge it? Then what is the idea of the museum? Is it for the people who come from foreign countries? And when I mean foreign countries, I mean Westerners? Or should it be an idea which is for the people who live in the community and who understand, like they carry that museum practice with them? So those were the questions for the non-extractivism museum practices. Shouldn't be something which is only for the people who can understand, the people who have that practice in their soul. It shouldn't be something which carry colonization roots. It should be something that help the community to go far and to move far from that history of this is something for the other people. It is not for us. So that was one of the questions of the non-extractivism museum. For who is the art being done? Yeah. And on the question of land and resistance, we went to a village, which is Kalera, and we asked people from that village, what is the word nature? What does it mean to you? They told us, how can you answer such a question when you live in nature? And we asked another question to a woman who was cultivating. We asked her, can you please show us the limits of your field? And she said, this happened in 2021. And she said, I cultivate from this place to where my strength ends. So there is no limit. So you can hear that there is no question of this land start from this place to another to tell you shouldn't go from this place to another place because we're trying to put this wall, because we have endangered species or endangered trees that we're trying to preserve from who? Because those people have been living there for years. Then you can't just come and say, we're trying to preserve this place. What about them? So, yeah, those are the questions which come back every time. There might be notes or this question of colonization, but there might be other forms of colonization from which everyone is struggling to get off. We need to liberate ourselves. So it is just a lot of concepts. It might be psychological. It might be environmental. Guy, you got me. Sometimes my French come back. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, those are the questions that have been created all these days. Yeah.
All right. Anybody has a question in the audience or comment? Yes, I see your hand. I think we'll give you a mic.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Fatou. I'm from Senegal. I don't know, we were talking about it and about the fact that we were both kind of very, very aware of that history. And then it still was this movie still was bringing us to the, brink of tears, also because of the fact that we are more and more aware of how all of these things are more and more present, of the masks are getting down, and it's more and more present how the violence is still happening still now. And I guess for me, the question would be from a generation that went from we are going to decolonize the museum to actually the museum is so decolonial that we need to get out of the museum. Maybe how are the ways that those people who are living in the art world and are trying to also have some kind of political stance and action are maybe organizing beyond art, I guess would be my question.
Thank you so much for the question. It is a very long way to reach that level of decolonization, we must admit. But for us, for Waza, for example, we took dialogue. For example, because we're still talking about restitution of artworks, then the question was, should we restitute them to the museum? Because those things were not for the museum. They had a social function. And when we restitute them, what about the people who use them? What about the communities where they were taken from? So we initiated dialogues. We invited the people where those objects were taken. We heard them. We had those sessions. They taught us. They talked to us. And also we asked the questions to the young from those communities, because there is a kind of distance between the last generation and this generation, my generation. We don't know anything about state use. And yeah, so now the museum should not be a place where only people could go, but the museum could go to the people. So this is one of the approach that we took. Then people come, and we also go to people. They instruct us, and then this way facilitates people to move from that idea that the museum is just something which has been created to store things, but it's something in which we can also store our knowledge and keep it for the coming generations. Yeah, I hope it answers your question.
Can I add something? Yeah. There is a Congolese philosopher, anthropologist called Valentine Mudimbe, and he wrote, now I can't remember in what book it is. I teach this text, so Christian and I are thinking about putting together a playlist of songs and text for the African Film Institute, so we should add this. But I think it's in either The Idea of Africa or The Invention of Africa, but there is a chapter in one of those books in which he talks about exactly what you're saying, which is in the definition of art itself. How is African art defined? Why does it have the name primitive? Where are the objects? What are they doing? And one of the things he talks about, or he writes about, is that the difference between having an object in a museum for specific purposes and then having an object that serves a social function, and the kinds of different practices and extractive practices, etc., that entails. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for this evening. Hello, hi. With this idea that you've just spoken about, I'm curious about the saying, the hand that gives is the hand that rules, and that in that art logic of which we speak, there is a kind of inherent patronage model, and the development aid ciphers that globally in any Western art context, essentially it becomes the same development aid conversation we've been thinking about in our various countries for so long. I'm curious, in the base of all the beautiful practices you're talking about, and in this question about how do we speak of art in other ways, how do you think about the hand that gives is the hand that pays, and sustainability and practice and all of that?
Yes, very big question. Well, I'll try. Okay, for Waza, for example, things started to change when the founding stopped just after COVID-19, that crisis. I started working at Waza just after COVID-19. So yeah, then that idea of thinking about art economy came up, and Curata is the project. So sometimes it happens that we question ourselves, like when you're creating art and you're receiving funding, sometimes you're responding to certain norms. So you're not really doing what you're supposed to do, right? And it is not easy. So that's why we started thinking of how can we, from art, also make entrepreneurs, so that we don't only depend on funding, but we also create in order to get money, because that is the major question. Artists should live from their artworks, but how? And who is the person who always buy art at that expensive prices? Well, it's a lot of questions. And also because one of the projects of Waza was liberating art from the paternalistic idea, of course, because it started with, the Jaca Mines Institution, which was one of the biggest mining company left by Belgian people, and it left people into that idea of there should always be someone to provide. And that was one of the biggest fights and also project that Waza carried. So from now on, we worked on different projects which encouraged artists to create, but also to think about the economy of art. And this is what we're trying to do. But I can say it is a very long way. Yeah, we hope some days we make it.
Please, let's continue the conversation together.